my name is John Bacon, Walter Johnson, 69, and I remember in my youth coming here and seeing Rod Stewart and the Faces for about $2.50. The crowd was no more than 100, maybe only 50. And they were so overpowering with their Marshall amps that they kept blowing the circuit breakers, but they finally got it going, and it was the greatest way in the world to see real entertainment. No nonsense, real music, right in your face, and it was not commercial. In the good old days when rock and roll was first being born, right here in front of us in Wheaton, who would believe it?
Right, who would believe it?
I actually saw one show here. I had just moved to this area. It was 1969, or actually 68 to 69, and a guy I knew said, "Oh, let's go to the Wheaton Youth Center and see the Small Faces." And I saw Rod Stewart and the Small Faces, and Ron Wood was still playing with the Small Faces, so that was pretty cool. And when I look back on it, we laughed about seeing a group like that at the Wheaton Youth Center.
Do you remember the actual concert date for Small Faces?
Don't remember the date, but it had to have been 70, possibly the fall 70. Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like.
Now, how about you? Do you remember the date of the Small Faces?
No,
okay.
I was pretty drunk.
But you were there, okay?
Oh yeah, it was great. Grand.
So, all right. Can you substantiate the problems they were having with the PA and the
sound
and the power outages and
right.
for that concert? Do you remember that?
Well, you know, this place was a real fancy, high-tech place, so it was pretty common to have PA problems and some ringing.
And they had Marshall amps, not the Fenders.
I know.
They were big time.
I know.
Yeah.
And I was a Rod Stewart fan at the time, but Ronnie Wood, who was in the band, later became, Rolling Stone. So.
Right.
It was not the group, it was like the Small Faces, or between the Small Faces and this, whatever he is now. And he didn't do very well. I mean, there was not an appreciative crowd. It was a nasty, rowdy crowd, and they argued back and forth because they just weren't that into what he was doing. And it was like it wasn't a real cultural crowd. So
there were some rumors that the Small Faces band were pretty drunk that night.
That's a good possibility because they started yelling back and forth. And what they were yelling, I was thinking, can't they come up with a better insult? They were going, if you think you can do any better, you come up here, and it was that level.
I was standing on the stage because the guy I knew, I think he knew a roadie or somebody, so I thought I was really cool, when I was 15, standing on the stage. And some guy in the audience started hassling the band, and Rod Stewart stopped and said, "You are lucky we are here," and then continued. And I imagine from what I hear now, a lot of these bands got booked at these places before they got famous, then they got really big, but they still had to honor their commitments. So I have a feeling that might have been the case, but I'm just guessing.
How did you find out about this? Was this, these were national bands. Did you just show up here every week or every month just saying, well, I'm going to be entertained, or did you actually follow these bands and they drew you here?
There was, we were kids, and of course there was the grapevine, and of course Barry Richards talked a lot, but you just knew who was showing up, and you'd show up, and that was it. But it was very loose, it wasn't commercial at all. You just showed up where the bands would be, and they did not advertise the way they do now. There was no nonsense with tickets. You showed up at the door, bought your ticket, and to see Rod Stewart, there was no reservations, no hassle, no credit cards, no lines, no fees. You just put down $2.50 at a little table right at the front door, and you were in. And one thing for sure, they could have had 6 times as many people in, but not that many people heard of the Faces and Rod Stewart in those days.
So did you really think it was something special to have an international act show up here in Wheaton, Maryland for a concert?
Absolutely, because we all knew Rod Stewart from Jeff Beck and Truth, that album. We thought it was very special, but rock and roll was not as big in this area as it is now. It was 2 types of music. There was soul music and rock and roll, 2 different camps entirely, and the 2 didn't mix a whole lot, and definitely the rock and rollers were in the minority, especially in Wheaton.
Yeah.